USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. An in-depth look at this week's top college hockey matchup and a preview of the other big games.
Welcome to the USCHO Game of the Week podcast. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. This podcast is brought to you by the NCAA Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo. Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. Our guest this week is the head coach of Penn State, Guy Gadowsky. He's in his 19th season as a head coach with stops first at Alaska Fairbanks and then at Princeton. And he's now in his 7th year behind the bench at Penn State. This weekend, the Nittany Lions take on Princeton at the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia.
And we are joined now by the head coach of Penn State, and that's Guy Gadowsky. Guy, first off, welcome to the show, and a nice season to date. A lot of good things, certainly on the offensive side for this team, and a lot of good things in the win column at this point, too.
Yeah, well, thanks. First, thanks a lot for having me. And yeah, you're right. It's been a pretty good year so far. Obviously, we can work on the defensive side of the puck, but that being said, you win by scoring more goals, and we've been able to do that a few times this year, so we like the way it's going.
I'm looking at some of the numbers that I was able to pull today. I think your offense is on the pace to about match what Quinnipiac was when they first started playing in Division I back in the days of the old MAC, where we know the competition level isn't what it is across the country these days. And you're not far off of the famous Maine team from 1992-93 that averaged just under 6 goals a game. Right now, well over the 5 goals a game point. What is it that makes this offense click and be so successful night in, night out?
Well, I don't think it's possible to score a lot of goals unless you have a lot of very skilled players. I mean, number one, and that's what it is. I think it's not only having some of them, it's having a lot of them. And right now, I think a big strength of ours is that we're getting a lot of production from all 4 lines and 3 sets of D. It's not just coming from one line. We do have one line that's been getting a lot of attention, but we're getting a lot of scoring from everybody, and I think that's the key.
When you know that you have that offensive ability behind you, obviously, I know you mentioned you'd like to tighten things up defensively, but it has to probably give you a little confidence that you can succeed in multiple scenarios. Obviously, taking the lead is good, but when you fall behind, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, there's whatever your identity is, if you do it well, I think it gives you confidence. And there's a lot of teams that have a lot of confidence because they know they can shut teams down. And there's other teams that have confidence because they feel that they can increase the tempo and put pucks in the net, and that's sort of where we're at. And I think you're right. I mean, every game takes on its own personality, so by no means can you say, hey, we have confidence in this area and that's what's going to happen this one particular game. But it is nice to know that we have had success that way, and if we do get in a situation where we are down, we don't panic because we know that we can score.
We're talking with Guy Gadowsky from Penn State. His team will face off against Princeton in the USCHO Game of the Week this week. A couple of players, a couple of sophomores that have obviously put up some big numbers. Evan Barrett and Alex, I hope I say it right, Limoges.
Limoges, yeah.
Limoges. Those two guys, 29 and 28 points respectively, the top 2 scorers in the country. They must have some chemistry, I would assume. But what makes these guys special as offensively talented players?
Yeah, sure. Well, one of the really main pieces of that is Liam Folks, and he is the right winger on that line. And really, he was put on that line their freshman year, later in the year, as a guy that Liam came a long way in terms of how he played the game, just his care for the puck, and how he was always a high producer, but his care for the puck was excellent. And that's where we thought both of those players who you mentioned, Evan and Alex, could use a little more of that influence. And so Folksy sort of seemed like the perfect guy, and he did a tremendous job, and they took off. And they've just kept on going right where they took off at the end of last year. So I think he deserves a lot of that credit. But what makes them special as a unit, including Liam, really the thing that really stands out is just how much fun they have playing together, how much fun they have scoring goals. And I don't mean just in games. I mean in practice, whether it's scrimmaging, whether it's a drill, whether it's 3-on-3. I mean, these guys just love playing together. They have a blast, and they really enjoy scoring goals, and that's what makes them so fun to watch.
Your back end, I look at the goaltending. You've now thrown a third goaltender in the mix, and freshman Oscar Odio, but Peyton Jones, Chris Funke, they've been basically sharing some of the responsibilities back there. What do you feel you're getting out of your goaltending core at this point?
Yeah, well, I'll speak about Peyton specifically. He was, I believe, third star, Big Ten third star of the week this week, and very well deserving. And it's funny, his numbers do not indicate the level that he's played. And what's happened not last game against Notre Dame, he had a 1-goal against performance. But prior to that, it just seemed we were getting goals. Pucks were being rimmed in, and he's going around the net to stop them, and they hit a stanchion, bounce out in front of the net. And we had 3 goals in one game that hit our own players, sticks, shin pads, skates to go behind the net, and another game where we had 3 goals that were scored from behind the net. So it just seems that, he was playing a lot better than the numbers were indicating, and it just sort of came together. We know that if he continues to play the way he is, those goals are not going to go in, and if last game against Notre Dame is any indication, we're hoping that that's turned for good.
One of the things that is the talk of college hockey is the tremendous support that you have at home at Pegula Ice Arena. What is the atmosphere like there for a game?
It's amazing. I mean, you have to be here to feel it. I know there's some good video of it, but you really have to be, to really get an idea of what's like, you have to be here to feel it. I cannot stress enough how much credit that the Roar Zone, our student section, deserves. I think the entire arena, they're bringing them along. Like, the entire arena is an excellent atmosphere, but they deserve 100% of that credit. They've done such a good job. They make it an experience. They make it such a fun game. They're extremely motivating. I mean, everybody associated with this program, staff, players, you name it, are all just love coming to the rink on game day because of the atmosphere here. It's awesome. It really is awesome. They make it fun. I think they're classy. I think they're funny. I love them. They're just so much fun to be around.
As we come to the semester break, you're 1/3 of the way through the Big Ten season. After this non-conference game this weekend, it's all Big Ten, half at home, half on the road. And right now in the standings, you still have a couple of games in hand with some of the league, but you find yourselves 5 points out of first place, and on the other side, out of last place, 3 points, but one weekend can put you in first place. How tight is the talent level? How tight is it going to be down the stretch in the Big Ten?
It's something that I believe all coaches expected. And this past game against Notre Dame was the first game that we have had that has not been a 1-goal game minus empty net goals. And you look around the league and it's very similar. So not only are the standings very tight, every individual game seems to be very tight. And I don't see any reason for it to change. I think it's great for fans. I think it's great for development of players, every game being tight. I think you get battle tested as a team and a program, but I mean, it sure doesn't make it easy. I'll tell you that. I mean, it is very difficult. And right now, not only is it tight, I think you look at, they're extremely high quality teams, and you can play a great game and lose pretty easily. And that's a good thing, as I said, for development and excitement. Maybe not a great thing for your nerves and your hair color, but that's the way it is right now.
If you extend that to college hockey in general across Division I, compared to your early days as a head coach to now, how much deeper is the talent pool out there, and how does that impact recruiting?
Yeah, it's not even close. I remember getting into it, and you'd see a lot of conference games that, scores were 8-1, 7-1, 9-1, et cetera. It happened a lot, and it happened often. And now it doesn't matter if they're conference games or non-conference games. No win now is really a surprise anymore in college hockey. It just happens way too much. And you touched on it. The number of excellent hockey players available, the pool has increased greatly. And not only that, I think the players that were already there are being more attractive or attracted to college hockey. I think there's more exposure north of the border, and a lot of those top players are now looking at college as a number one option, which when I got into it, that wasn't the case at all. I think when I did get into it, a less than 12% of NHL was college players. Now it's over 33%. So that says a lot right there. So not only has the pool increased greatly, I think the number of players are being more attracted to college is also increasing. And because of that, all of college hockey is extremely deep, and anybody can win any given night. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but in college hockey, that is absolutely true.
Guy Gadowsky from Penn State is our guest on the USCHO Game of the Week podcast. And I'll get into the Game of the Week and your opponent, Princeton, shortly. But I want to follow on a question that Ed asked about the atmosphere and the success of this program. Could you have known when you left Princeton to come to Penn State a little over half a decade ago that this program could grow into this quickly? Was this a vision you had, or is this even maybe outshined even your brightest vision for this program?
I think it was a little outside and a little quick. I think that a lot of people that spoke about this program and what their vision was down the road envisioned something like this. Maybe not to this extent, but something like this. And even that vision was something that was many years down the road. I think it happened a lot quicker than anybody anticipated. And really, again, I think a lot of that is due to just a credit of the student section. I mean, how great it is and how much fun it is, and it's very attractive. And when you get hockey players or potential student athletes that come and see it, it's something that's very attractive. So again, that student section, our Roar Zone, deserves so much credit for the success of this program. But I would be lying. I think there was people that worked extremely hard to get this program off the ground that envisioned something like this in the future, but I don't think anybody expected it to happen this quickly.
Your opponent will be a team you're somewhat familiar with, having coached them not too long ago, and that's Princeton this week. The game will be played on neutral ice in Philadelphia. What do you know about this team? What do you have in terms of expectations and challenges that you know you'll face out of the gate with Princeton?
Yeah, so first of all, we have played them at Wells Fargo before. We actually lost, but it was a great game. If I remember correctly, shots were something like 45-47. It was a really entertaining game. And since then, I've been saying, I really respect and admire how they play the game. And it was really gratifying to see them go on and win the ECACs and go to the NCAA tournament. And that being said, we did play them earlier this year. And obviously, they have two players that are the returning. No team can boast any returners that have been so successful in offensive production last season as they can. And they're a big part of their team. We know that. They're extremely dangerous. If you take your eye off them for a second, you are going to pay. We know that. At the same time, they play a very fast team game. So you can't just focus on them alone. But if you don't, they're going to make you pay. Aside from that, you better get your wheels on because they move. I really like how they play. It was really nice to see their success, and Coach Fogarty's done a great job with his staff, and our staff has a lot of pride in that. We want to see them do well because all of our coaches have been at Princeton and have a lot of pride in that program. So to see them doing so well is very gratifying for us as well.
Well, it should be not just a great hockey game this Saturday night, but also a great atmosphere at the Wells Fargo Center. Guy Gadowsky, we appreciate your time. Hope you enjoy the great game that it's probably going to be on Saturday night, and wish you the best of luck in the second half of the season once you come back from break.
I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.
That's Penn State head coach Guy Gadowsky. We'll be back with more of the podcast after this word from the NCAA Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo.
Speed and precision, unrelenting power. This trophy is not given, it must be earned. The 2019 NCAA Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo.
With a shot, saved by Morris. Takes the shot, Richter!
Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4 and get your tickets today.
This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online.
Jim, when we heard Guy talk about confidence, I was reminded of a tweet I saw earlier this week from Jim Craig of the 1980 Olympic gold medal team. And his quote was, "Playing not to lose is rooted in fear, while playing to win is based on confidence." And when you're a high-flying offensive team like Penn State, you've got to be confident.
I think so. You're confident on that side of the puck. And obviously that is shown. Sometimes they've fallen behind a couple of goals and still been able to rally and come back. They've won games where they've scored 11. They've won games where they've scored 8. They've won games 7. They've put up some big numbers. But you still have to know that there's going to be defensive confidence. And I think that if there's any issue that this Penn State team might have out there, the only little bit could be their defense. And we know in the postseason, it's nice to score goals, but it's really nice to keep them out of your net.
Well, they've got a matchup this weekend against Princeton. And to hear Guy Gadowsky describe it, he's taking on a team that in many ways is a mirror image of his.
I think so, because I think that, his blueprint of that program didn't get lost too much when he left. I think there's still some constant communication with Ron Fogarty. And as he mentioned, all three of his coaches, himself included, had spent some time at Princeton, either as a head or an assistant coach. So, there's a lot of pride in that program. And I think that there is a little bit of a mirroring. I don't know that Princeton is playing as well as they're capable of at this point in the season. But they do have that capability. They have some really talented offensive players, that last year, particularly in that second half, really showed themselves well. That was why they win the Ivy League a year ago. And I think that's what they're trying to do yet again, get that Ivy League, get that ECAC championship, and then get back to an NCAA tournament. It's going to be a tough hill to climb where they've started, but I know that this team has the capabilities.
Yeah, they started out with a loss to Penn State at Pagula Ice Arena and then went 3-0-1. But since then, 7 straight losses, including twice in overtime.
And that's tough. You like you mentioned, you've kind of dug yourself at 3-8-1. You've dug yourself a bit of a hole. But the fact that it's an Ivy League team, they started their season later than everybody else. They have a lot of catch-up play to do. They'll have the bulk of their schedule still to play in the second half.
And what we were saying about the Big Ten certainly applies to ECAC hockey. After 3 more non-conference games, the one this weekend plus a couple of games at home against Maine, the rest of it is ECAC all the way, and certainly the toughest part of the schedule, as this will have been the 7th straight game against a ranked team for the Tigers.
That's rough. When you're not playing your best and you're having to take on basically the best competition, that can be difficult. And I think that has been the bump in the road that Princeton may have hit right now. And I think that if they get some games where they can get some comfort and confidence and put some wins together, this is still a team that I like. I still feel like this is a dangerous team. And I think that even Saturday against Penn State, if there's an upset out there, Princeton has the ability to do it.
Well, there are not a lot of other games on the schedule, just 15 matchups this weekend. But the premier one really has to be in the WCHA, where number 3 Minnesota State, 7 points ahead of Bowling Green, goes on to take on the number 12 Falcons at Slater Family Ice Arena.
Yeah, this is a series that, I think that a lot of people in the WCHA look forward to. There's a few teams right now that feel like they're dominant, and obviously Minnesota State and Bowling Green are the 2 most dominant teams in that league. And it'll be a good bout. And the fact that the higher ranked team is going to have to go on the road, as Minnesota State will go to Bowling Green, that makes it even more interesting. The fact that these games are road games for the number 3 team that to this point in the season has been playing excellent hockey, just 2 losses all year. So those 2 losses did come on the road. So, it's one of those things you have to kind of caution yourself. If you're Minnesota State, you don't want to make too many mistakes. In Bowling Green, they're ready to probably put up a couple of big W's for their program.
Well, and then after this weekend, it's probably going to be a focus on the World Juniors for Mike Hastings.
It will. He'll be the coach of that team that will play up in British Columbia, and I think that that's a great honor for him, a great feather in the cap of Minnesota State to have their coach selected, and it will be. You're right. It will be 100% focused on that once these 2 games are played.
Well, let's turn to another game. One is a ranked team, one is not. Colorado College travels to the desert to take on number 15 Arizona State.
And for Arizona State, they're happy to be home. They've had a few road games here, and they got their act back together last week at Princeton, pulling off a couple of wins. Saturday's game coming in overtime. Colorado College, they've been a better than expected team this year. So you're really looking at a matchup where you have a decent Colorado College team that plays in a very difficult league, playing an Arizona State team that has probably opened some eyes. So I think this is a really good matchup on both sides. I think both teams have something to prove this weekend, and I think it has the ability. We know that Arizona State, a tough building to play in, that will be a big challenge for Colorado College. But if there's any team out there that, you know, you might be able to overlook a little bit and could pull off an upset, Colorado College kind of strikes that in my mind. And Ed, while we're on the topic of interesting games, the one that strikes me will be a game you'll be involved in calling the game for RIT. But Niagara and RIT, they play a single game on Saturday night, but it feels like it's part of a best-of-3 series as these teams will face each other the next 3 games. But it's separated by almost a month in time, as the next 2 games won't come till the beginning of January. That's kind of an interesting scheduling quirk for both Niagara and RIT.
Well, it has to do with having 11 teams in Atlantic hockey. They don't want any team to have the last weekend off. So RIT will face Niagara one last time on the Wednesday of the last week of the season, and then have the second game at home that's on the schedule against Canisius to wrap up the season. But it's interesting. RIT started out with its best start in the Division I era at 6-3-1, and since then have lost 5 straight. Close one at Northeastern. They came up against a tough Billy Christopoulos at Air Force, and then just seemed a little bit snake-bitten in 2 very hard-fought games against Sacred Heart. So they're a team right now that is looking for confidence. Their coach, Wayne Wilson, described them as being a bit fragile mentally right now. So it's a big single game, especially heading into the semester break. Meanwhile, Jason Lammers at Niagara has described his team, which is getting scoring from all over 4 lines and 3 defensive pairs. He described them as not having superstars, but being like a pack of wolves in an article on USCHO.com this week with Chris Lurch. So it'll be interesting to see how these 2 teams react. The season could very well be hinged for RIT on how they do this Saturday.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, we talked about confidence earlier. You mentioned it again with Wayne Wilson talking about the fragile personality of his team right now, the lack of confidence. The goal scoring can be such a big part of it, and it's been tough to score goals. And then last weekend, you finally kind of feel like maybe you broke out and you score 3 on Friday and 4 on Saturday. Still don't come away with a win. That is where the biggest part of confidence can be tainted, when you feel you've started to succeed and yet still don't get the result.
Well, where confidence shows in lacking is things like weak passes at the blue line on the power play that get picked off. 2 shorthanded goals and a bad giveaway in front of the Tiger net. Really the difference on Saturday night. So we'll see if RIT can turn that one around. But that's really it for the slate of games. Total of 15 games. If you have an opportunity to catch one, please do so. And we'll recap what happens over the weekend on Sunday's USCHO Weekend Review podcast. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.